And here we go. Welcome to the Gud Performance Podcast. Otto Zaccardo, Troy Shallow, joined with the greatest weightlifting coach in New England, by our standards, Dan Marrone of the Dojo. All right, now we've known Dan for quite some time, and we're really happy to have him on this podcast because we've learned a lot, as coaches, athletes. We got a good relationship with him, and we continue to pick his brain. He gives us a lot of little tidbits, and if you're ever looking for a weightlifting coach, we highly recommend. All right, now it's much more casual. Dan, so say hello, and we'll just get right into it because that's not actually how we go through the podcast, but it is fun to introduce it that way.
Yes, give us some Dan lore and background.
Some Dan lore and background. Wow. First of all, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate we got the time to do this. God lore. I've been doing this for about 15 years. Been coaching weightlifting 10 years now. Long enough to forget. Right out of college. Yeah, right out of college, I started working for Garage Strength 2010, 2011. Got back to Massachusetts soon thereafter. Started the dojo 2014, 2015, and been coaching on my own pretty much ever since.
Thank you.
Beautiful. How was your, you said you started out at Garage Strength. How was your time out there starting out? You spent a full year there, 2 years there?
Yeah. It ended up being about 2 years. Honestly, it was one of those wild situations where it's like I was getting my diploma, my bachelor's. Like that evening, I think Dan and I were finalizing plans for like the next day I was going to pack my bags, get in my car, and just drive right down. It was like one of those like do it now or don't do it ever type situations, right? So I was down there for 2 years, got thrown into the fire immediately, which I thought was the best way to learn how to coach because you have all your theory, your application, whatever from college, and then you get into a situation where there's kids everywhere and you have to coach immediately. And that was huge for me. It really got me out of my shell, kind of prove that I can coach groups, things like that, but also the opportunity to finally like experiment, all this stuff you think you know, and then it's happening all in front of you, and you really have to like apply and work through it. That was like the biggest thing about that experience. It was huge.
And that obviously, when you came, so you were there, and then you came back to Massachusetts, started the dojo here.
Mm-hmm.
How did, when you got back here, obviously that you knew this is what you wanted to do. And I know now because they were my college roommates, but they knew you back in like 6th grade, Dandini, Pilata, and then Noah Gray, and I'm sure a few others. You started training them when they were real young. How did you get into that? Because, geez, that's probably over 10 years now. So they were probably some of your first clients, I would assume. How did you get into that, and how did you start the dojo back here?
Yeah, so when I came back to Massachusetts, I had a job lined up with a small strength and conditioning gym that was open for a few months. And it was one of those situations where it wasn't quite what it was supposed to be. You think you're coming into a job where it's going to be, from what I was coming from, a gym that was growing, thriving, and was about to just kind of hit its peak and stride, and then coming into a situation where it was more ground level. Right? It was slow to go. So you kind of getting into a job where it was like, wow, this turned into like very small part-time work. So you kind of get into that like survival kind of grind mode of like, okay, we're going to start getting kids into this gym as fast as possible. And a lot of those Leominster kids were some of the first ones to come in. And it kind of started from there and grew from there, where it was like, didn't really meet many of the parents, but it was like you train one kid, the one kid brings the 2 or 3 kids in, and it kind of just goes from there. And it kind of snowballed into what it is now.
Yeah, and even our connection with you, we can trace this back. So where did you meet? Because we got put in touch with you from Gus, right? And then how did you meet Gus? Where did that start? I don't even
Gus
remember.
came in from James Zaris. So Gus was roommates with James in college.
Yeah.
I think kind of just on the other side of us opening back up after the pandemic. James had brought Gus in, and then soon thereafter, maybe like 3 months or so, that's when we started getting you in, then we started getting Troy in, and yeah, kind of went from there.
The ripple
so
effect.
Funny that you say that. Funny how you say that. It's like, yeah, so things from 10 years ago bring us all the way up to the point where like you guys are walking in the door eventually, right?
Yeah. Well, we're still
cool.
we're just starting to see that now. We had a kid come in for his first week of training this past week, and he is one of our high school football coaches. He's a coach of ours. his son is now going into college to play lacrosse. And it was one of those moments where Troy and I just looked at him, because he's now, like 6'1" or something? Like
he's
full grown,
he's
chiseled.
Now.
He's getting ready to roll.
Yeah.
He's got a lot to work on. If you hear this, you got a lot to work on. But it was more just so he was like, knee-level little kid running around the gym and practice and stuff when we were playing. And now to see him like a full-grown guy, like an athlete, it was quite the trip for us.
Like you're saying, it all comes full circle. Like you started with Dandini and Pilata and James when they were in whatever 6th, 7th grade, and then 10 years later, that leads into us being there. Like it's interesting how that works.
It's still a trip to this day because, like, God, the other day we got a wedding invitation, right? And in my head, some of these kids are sure they're 26 now, and they're still 13, 14 in my mind. So it to my point, I'm still wrapping my head around them driving cars, and then time's speeding up so much now that it's like, okay, they're also getting married, and it's like, I don't know how to deal with all this. Like, this is, so it's funny how it works.
Well, that's a separate piece. It's life development, right? Because, that's the separate piece from training. And I'm actually curious on how you met. That's something I don't know if we've really talked about. We haven't had as many conversations from, the coaching side of it. We're doing a little bit more from, athletes' perspective and stories. But the difference between, or I guess where you personally draw the line between, because strength coaching and coaching in general, it's mentorship, but it also is just transactional. It is a service. You're coming here to get stronger or better at the movement. I need to get better. Please help me. Okay, I help you. Now you move on. But there is more to that because you spend so much time with these athletes, things bubble up, and sometimes life gets in the way of training, or sometimes some type of, interpersonal something is the reason why they're not getting better at a certain movement or a lift, or they're not making progress. And so I guess a talking point would be, how do you manage that? Where do you draw the line? And is it all, I guess one answer is everybody's different and you can always just work through it. But I think that you've always done a good job of communicating with people the way they need to be communicated with and manage them. Well, you've done I think it was, you said it recently, said, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Mm-hmm. And I would be curious on your thoughts on that and how you've kind of navigated, and how that's probably changed since when you first started to now. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think this all kind of started when I was interning at Holy Cross. I got a chance to watch watching the football team interact with the head strength coach, Coach Oliver, and I noticed there was not necessarily a mask that switches on, but when the football team rolled in, all of a sudden it turned into strength and conditioning, to all of a sudden it became oh, this is a Division I sport and this is what it looks like, where that strength and conditioning coach has to be more in the wheelhouse of position coach, head coach. Hate to say it like that, but that rah bullshit, right? It just didn't make sense to me, right? Where working with some of the kids that came into that program, I realized they were more receptive to a more human level, right? So, and I guess what I mean by that is these kids all participate in sports and they're in school and they have peers that are more over them, not on their level. Right. So I started to realize that if I just kind of get on their level, they could probably respond to me and hear me out for exactly what I'm saying. And also them having a chance to be heard more often as well. Because you guys play football for a long time. We've all played sports. There's sports and there's also school settings where it's no one's actually hearing you. They're hearing you, but no one's listening to you per se. Right. So I think from a strength and conditioning level and a coaching level, if you have the opportunity to be that peer that's more we see eye to eye and not authoritative, then a kid is going to open up and tell you exactly what's going on, tell you exactly what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and it might be outside of the realm of training. And you can actually get to some root causes sometimes of, how do I get this person properly motivated? Or how do I get them to see the line down the road per se, right? Because they can only live in a 24-hour, 96-hour window of I can only see the next couple days. I can't see 6 years from now. So I think that's huge. That's important. I think that's a quality that's it's allowed me to separate from other coaches. Yeah. Forever, right? Just being able to be hard on people, be fair on people, but also give them the perspective they need. in a way that they can digest, right?
And even looking at, so you're trying to accomplish something, whatever your training goals are, but looking at it like, we are a team, we're figuring this out. Yeah, I'm playing the role of coach, but we're doing this to get you better. That was something that was very, very different for me when I trained with you. It was like, all right, what are we doing here? Like, we got to get this done. What's going on? What's going well? What's going not well? Let's figure it out. But that was a very different dynamic than what I've had in the previous with head strength and conditioning coaches where, like you say, that authoritative, like you're doing this, boom, 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 boom. It's all coming in. You don't really have a say. Like it is. It doesn't matter, which is sometimes needed for some people. But I think, at least personally, from a coaching standpoint, that was a good style for me to experience, because I think that both Troy and I take that and we use it a lot currently, which is like, I think that's helpful for a lot of kids, especially when they're hesitant or they have something. Like, when someone walks into the gym and they're saying, yeah, I want to like get going with training, but that there's like something that's just eating at them, and they're not telling you, it's not going to come up right away, but you can just tell that there's something that they like know they need help with, they know, and they're just walking in. It's like, maybe this guy could help me, or at least like maybe point me in the right direction. And I think that style of coaching is really good for kind of getting to that. And usually it's not that complicated of an issue, and guys seem to see a lot of progress once you just be on an even playing field and like, hey dude, I want this just like you want this. Yeah. Let's figure it out to make it happen.
Yeah. And then something I think, like on that note, that we're trying to do now and that you did a really good job of with us, is just building that trust. Like building the trust to the point where like the athlete feels comfortable enough to talk to you about what's actually going on, and then you can then be like, all right, now I know what's going on with this athlete. Now I know what makes them tick. Like, because that's super important, is like figuring out their psyche and what makes each athlete like work harder and tick. And you did a really good job with that with us. And I think you probably do that for all of your athletes, and that's what makes you such a successful coach. But I think that's super important.
Yeah, I think, thank you. And I think kind of building on that it's just a different way of getting athlete buy-in in a way that it doesn't have to be this loud thing, right? It's like I said, like there's all this other stuff that they're used to. We're just going at it a different way. And I'm sure you're seeing this with your guys now too, that it's like, this may be the first opportunity for your guys to have some sort of say in what goes on in their life, right? Whereas everything else is more like toe the line, whatever, right? So once you do that, and I'm sure you've picked up on this, it's like, even in training, the intensity that you will get from some of these guys because they're fully bought in and that they're trusting you, it's like night and day. Where it's like, are they just throwing their shoes on and getting it done? Or they are so committed to this process now with you because they realize how committed you are to this process that they are absolutely throwing that extra 10 pounds on the bar, and they are absolutely going to try and run 0.1 faster just because they know that like you are sitting there and you are fully committed to what this is all about. Right? This can be a lonely process for a lot of guys and a lot of kids. It's really just about, approval and, getting the marks, and you're there guiding you, and it's like, fuck, finally there's someone on the path with me, not me just trying to like go through this thing by myself and like trying to get like by August or by report card time, finally getting the validation from like the coach or the parent being like, hey, great job, bud. Whereas like you guys are every week, it's like, you're doing great. We're doing what we're supposed to do. This is the path,
Yeah. And sometimes convincing people, especially with like longer or more difficult training blocks, you mentioned like getting validation from like the parent or the coach or the kid, like that's crazy that is such an important piece of it. Is you have to like put it in front of their face, like, you're doing great, here you go, like this is what we did here. Because I don't know, we run into this a lot with other places, is this is like one of the first questions we ask where you go somewhere like, did you get stronger? Like, what did you do there? Like, how was it? And they're like, oh, I don't know, like I went there, I exercised, like I did workouts. Did you get stronger? I mean, I think so. Well, what did it look like? Like what
were your numbers before? What were your numbers after? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? How do you not know? You were doing it. You didn't track anything? No.
Yeah, which is one thing for, like, if we had talked about this, if you're in that age bracket of like, I don't know, 16 or 17 to 22, 23, and you're going somewhere, and it's not like, oh yeah, I got my, these 5 metrics up by X%, something's really wrong, because if you're lifting at that point, and anyone who's listening, you should be lifting at that age, male or female, whoever you are, because that is the easiest time to make progress and transform your body for the rest of your life. That is the time to train. That's the time to train. So that's why Troy and I heads explode when guys come in. Yeah, I was training over here. Did you make progress? I don't really know. What do you mean? It drives me crazy. I mean, you could have a coach literally go into a gym and just blast push-ups nonstop, and at that age group, they're getting stronger. And we still see guys will go places, train for months, and not really get any faster or stronger in that age group of young athletes. And I think that it is absolutely crazy and a little bit kind of unacceptable, unless there's some external factor that might be lost on me. But it mostly just seems like, I don't know, there's not a good culture. And again, that goes back to things that Troy has said, and I know a lot of other people that we've talked to have said, which is like how you do something is much more important than what you do. And we're seeing it just that there's not a lot of juice at like other spots or other coaches, or I don't know how they manage it. It's actually different. It's interesting talking to you, because the dojo is kind of different from the GPC, in that there's not a ton of like as you said, the rah bullshit, which is needed in the GPC, but it wasn't really needed in the dojo to have such immense success. And I think that's interesting that different coaches kind of manage their own way, but it's more so I have this thing that I'm getting done. How am I going to do it? What works best? So I guess we could talk about the differences between I went off on a tangent about how people don't get stronger, and I can't believe that it doesn't happen like with teenagers and adolescents, but how you manage different, because when we came to the dojo, it was quite a different atmosphere with Troy and I screaming at each other versus when you're trying to keep your weightlifters like very calm and focused on their technique, and then you have like, thing 1 and thing 2 just slamming weights, screaming.
I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit, just us, Otto and I there, like training with you at the dojo, and then what it was like training us, and some things you learned. And I think that would be a good topic, because a lot of people don't know really like that we train now, how Otto and I used to be when we were training together and stuff. And
we should have Philbin on, because he had a great line about this, because I think that's when he first met me when I was there, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, like what was that like training us?
Yeah, they only know us as coaches now, so you can give back.
So what it was like training you guys? It's funny. It's like the gym was already on that path, transitioning to more of a weightlifting gym than it was strength and conditioning, right? So it was funny, because it's like once you guys landed in there, I was sitting there and I was like, okay, I think I was driving home one day actually after doing it wasn't the initial sessions with Otto, but as soon as Troy started to come in, that's when I realized I was like, okay, I need to remind myself that certain athletes are going to require certain things out of me, right? So like remind myself back to my old days that I was like, okay, I'm going to have to scale myself back like 5-10 years and remind myself like what's the sport I'm dealing with, what's the type of athlete I'm dealing with, their personalities and all that stuff, just so I can mold into what I need. So again, so like the buy-in and all the like the environment's correct and all that, right? So but having you guys in together, it was fun, challenging in a way, because it was like, here you guys are over here with big goals, big fucking goals, big attainable goals. And it was like, we got to get to this stuff, and it's important. And at the same time, it's like, it's at a time of day where it's like, we also have some people who are in there for like some general health type stuff, right? So we got like goblet squats and some sled pushes going on over here, and okay, give me a second, we all have to like stop what we're doing because we got 5x5 clusters and Troy's going huge on the weight releasers today, and we have to curtail for the next 3 minutes to get the environment where we needed it for that to work, right? So it was fun and challenging in the sense where it was like just managing all the personalities that were in the room at the same time, whereas if it was like, God, just later in the day, or I hate to say it, 5 years prior, like the place would have been batshit crazy, and it would have been like the thing we needed, and all the kids would have been screaming exactly the way it needed to be. Yeah.
And then there'd be times where I'd have the weight releasers on, and I'd walk off and back up, and the weight releaser would fly off, and it'd be just madness. And I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, pure chaos. And it's really just 8:30 in the morning, right? Like, that's all so it's just, dude, it was fun, challenging, and for me, it was like, at the time as a coach, it was the push I needed as a coach to, remind myself, again, the audience, the personalities, the modalities that were needed. Having two guys walk in the gym that were like just absolute sponges in terms of like, they wanted to know how everything worked. They wanted to know the why, but they also wanted to go as hard as possible with whatever it was that was being done that day. And, for anyone listening, for anyone that's in your gym right now, if I had to say there's an ideal athlete type, you guys fit that mold, because it was like the amount of buy-in, the amount of wanting to know, the curiosity, and just to also bring the intensity. Like, Troy, there was mornings where you were chasing me to the front door when I was trying to unlock the place, right? And I was just like, I haven't had someone do this before, where it was like, they want to get there before I even get there. They just want to get this done, and they want to get better, check it off, and get on to the next workout. When I look back on it, it was awesome time. Just for the setting and all that stuff that was going on.
From a coach standpoint, I now understand what you mean, because like, we have guys where there are some that just want to know what to do. Hey, just tell me what to do. And then we have other guys that want to know all the whys and like really get into, what does this mean? Why does this mean? And I think that's what we were like. But it definitely makes you have to know why always. You have to be able to pull it out, because some kid might keep going deeper with the questions. Not something that you would think about necessarily, like, hey, like, this hurts, you're doing this, come do this. But why? But why? But why? And then it's like, well, all right, I guess I'm teaching a mini course right now because this kid wants to know. And he should know. The athletes should know how their body works. But it definitely keeps you sharp, because you have all this information that you're constantly like pulling back out. And sometimes I even forget things where I'm like, I kind of forget why, but I know that this is right. And then it's like, all right, well, let me go back and find exactly why for that kid. But that's definitely an interesting point, because I didn't think about that when I was an athlete. But then, like, now that I'm coaching athletes, I can see it where it's like, you always have to you think so much more about the why, because that's your responsibility versus, just show up and slam weights and then look at your coach saying, what's this do? Why are we doing this? Yeah. Where are we moving? Where's this going to go? This is going to work? Excellent.
And then there were times where we'd be doing, like, yelling at each other across the gym, like doing ab wheel rollouts, and people be in there like, are they actually like fighting? Like, what? Is everything okay? And you're like, yes, no, they're just crazy.
It's just Tuesday. That's all that's happening right now. Like, this is what it is, man. Yeah. With how you guys were, I think building on what you're saying with, like, there's some athletes I also learned is if they know everything that's going on and why it's going on, that's a form of getting the buy-in that you want, right? There's other athletes where, freak, non-freak, whatever, like, they can just plug into what's happening and just, them just doing it is enough, right? Whereas, and this is huge on the weightlifting side as well, where it's a more process-driven creature, where it's like, if they know why everything is happening the way it's happening, then they basically take like comfort in that, knowing that it's the path that's required, and this sucks and this is hard, but I know why this is happening. Whereas other people are just like, yeah, fuck it, whatever, we're doing something really hard today and I'll just go balls out. But again, that's how you get the most out of everybody, right?
Yeah, I've seen that as a double-edged sword though sometimes, where athletes really want to know the why, and then it becomes like, so they get so lost in the weeds, they start trying to be, I guess, looking into the why too much, and it actually takes away from them just like, all right, I gotta like do this, because you're always thinking about, is this the right thing? Is this the right thing? And second guessing, it's just like, well, something is, but if you we've talked about it before, Troy, is just program hopping or coach hopping, where it's like, the why, you want to know everything, and then you want to know this other thing, and you keep changing like every so often. You never have that time to just like clock the reps in and just keep going and moving forward and moving something. So I just I see that sometimes, because we have kids that are like 17 years old, and they'll look at Troy and say, but why am I doing this? It's like, because you need to and you have no idea what you're doing. That's why.
There was a kid that we gave him, it was like lunges or whatever. He's like, why am I doing this? I'm like, because it's hard. And he's like, yeah, it's really hard. I said, that's why you're fucking doing it. He's like 16 years old or whatever. But something else that we run into that I don't know, because it was primarily just you, Dan, but something that we run into is someone will ask Otto a question. Otto will give them an answer, and then 2 minutes later, they'll come to me, ask the same question. I'll give them the same answer, and Otto will be like, you literally just asked me that. Like, why? Like, it's mom and dad, and we're like, what?
Vice versa. Where, they'll go to Troy, blah, blah, blah. It'll be goes to Otto, goes to Troy. Goes to Troy, goes to Otto. And then we look at each other like, do you need to double check?
Like, what
Did you need to double check? Because the other thing is, it's the kind of thing where it's like, it might be a different answer. Where it's like, well, Coach Troy told me to put a band over here and do this. Or Coach Otto told me to sub it out and just do it this way. And it's really like, pick which one you want to go with. It doesn't matter. These are like really tiny little questions. And it's just...
Yeah, I think I used to get a little hot back when I was at Dane's at Garage Strength, and the question, something like that would pop up where it's like, someone would ask me something, I'd give them the answer, and then, sure, they'd walk right over and go straight to Dane, ask the same question, and get verbatim the same answer. Maybe a few extra swear words, but pretty much the same answer. And I think, especially with kids, it is kind of that, like, not necessarily like challenging authority, but, it's almost like they're like, fact-checking without realizing it, and it's funny because it's like at the time you're like, this is kind of a pain in the ass, but it's like we remind ourselves that like 16, 17, the world is a big fucking amazing place to these kids still, right? So when you hear something and there's two of you in the room, there's two experts in the room, right? And the way one may say something and then the way another may say something, to you guys it's verbatim the same thing, but just how it's explained, tones, sentence structure, or whatever, all of a sudden it clicks with one of the ways that you explained it, right? And I see it in weightlifting a lot where it's like, I could accuse someone the same way someone who just switched coaches and came to me said it, and just because I said it, it clicks. But it is absolutely the same shit that coach had said for like literally 4 or 5 years. But it was just, it's like approach, explanation, and again, like the molding of like the feedback system, however it works for that person. It's more complex the longer I go, and I realize that it's not so much like I get it in the heat of the moment. These kids are just coming from school, everyone's all wound up, and you're just like, can you really just ask that shit again? It's funny how it just opens up and it's like deeper when you have a chance to actually like sit on it, right?
Well, the other thing is it'll be repetitive questions. So it's something that it'll be an exercise or a movement that I know this athlete has asked Troy like for 3 weeks in a row, like how to set something up. And now they're coming to me because they wouldn't dare ask him a 4th time and piss him off because he's explained it 4 times. And it'll be like, all right, maybe I'll ask Coach Otto, or vice versa. They'll ask Coach Troy because I haven't asked him about this movement. So technically my tally with this coach on how many times to do this exercise is lower. So my risk of getting screamed at and berated is much lower because
it's like, dude,
I've asked Coach Troy 3 or 4 times, but I've only asked Coach Otto like once, so it might be okay if I just ask him again as a refresher. Meanwhile, this athlete has had something explained to them 7 times. Same thing. So if you're listening, try to absorb more, because we don't mind explaining things over and over again, but like the same one repetitively and then hopping back and forth between Troy and I when we're just going to tell you how to set it up. It doesn't matter exactly how, but just like figure it out on your own. We do try to encourage like self-sufficiency in terms of like running through your workout, where you should be able to go through the warm-up. By the way, this is a huge tangent. Band pull-aparts. Everybody in the GPC loves them. Do you know where we got them, GPC listeners? This guy right here. Lots of band pull-aparts were done at the dojo. Lots of band pull-aparts. Yeah.
Lots and
Actually,
lots.
Band pull-aparts, and I think that might have been the first time Troy and I ever trained like the rotator cuffs too.
Still do them every upper body day for everybody. It's programmed into the warm-up. The elbow and the knee rotator.
So just to give Gud Performance lore, because there's a lot of guys that train, and we use a lot of techniques that we use with Dan. If you want to know where things came from, fan favorites of the GPC is band pull-aparts, pigeon, couch stretch.
Weight releasers.
A lot of our warm-up weight releasers. I don't think we've made anyone do Klokov squats in a while.
Yeah, I'll program.
But definitely just.
I'll program like a 6-second eccentric, 2-second
too.
pause, but not to the degree of like I remember you had Otto going like 10-second eccentric, 8-second pause, and it's like I don't like that was like a different level of what someone could handle. Like rep schemes and stuff that I've gotten from you, like the 753 or like the 864, like that's an awesome one. The single leg barbell Bulgarians are great. A lot of stuff from the dojo. Like Dan has made a lasting impact on our programming.
Yeah.
GPC
if you're a
listeners.
GPC guy, you're also a disciple of Sensei Dan.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a lot of that stuff too is like that stuff passed down over time too, right? So like the warm up you guys used to do for your upper body, that is the exact same upper body warm up I was shown and was told to give to kids at Garage Strength. And coming out of college, in my mind, it was like, oh, you got to have these like 17 warm up exercises. We got to get some jumping jacks going and shit. And I saw these kids, strong fucking kids, coming in for an upper body day. 13-year-old wrestlers. That's what I remember. The kind of kids where you shake their hand for the first time and you're concerned because you've never felt a 13-year-old shake your hand so hard before, right? And these kids are warming up on band pull aparts, external rotations, and then getting into what they're supposed to be doing for the day. And how simple and how to the point that was blew my fucking mind. That was like, so you're telling me you could do 2 or 3 things, 2 or 3 sets, and you're good to go, and your whole body just unravels, and it's ready to perform at a high level, at least in the weight room. I was blown away. Like, that was like, I would say like, day one, I don't know shit. That's the thing I saw. Where it was like college and real life started, right? Immediately. So, yeah.
So, I think one thing that I did want to ask you about or cover at some point was, so in like strength and conditioning world, or even training, coaching, however you want to describe the overall kind of world of coaching, there's a lot of, because we talked about a few things that we took from you. I think it was also even the first exposure we had to like just like eccentric training, just those tempos down. I don't really remember having a ton of experience with that, or at least not to the degree that we did it with you. But how people, because there's no one, people rarely invent exercises. So then the world is kind of, you can always just take things from other coaches and implement it and try it and make it your own. But it's like, do you know where that thing comes from and why you're doing it and how kind of messy it seems to me? I don't have as much experience, but it seems to me just it's a very messy, like crazy way that training exercises and protocols get implemented, and especially like there's a lot of mimicry without necessarily like depth in terms of why am I doing this? You know what I mean? And does that even matter if you need the depth of knowledge? Because if it works, it works. Like the whole Gud thing is keep it as simple as possible to get the results. But I just was curious on your perspective on that, because there's a lot of it there, and sometimes I wonder, does it even really matter, right? Because if you're getting results, who cares? But it seems like there's just a lot of that in the coaching world, and I'm sure you see it from like weightlifting too, because there might be a coach overseas that's doing this thing with their athletes, and now there's this other coach over here that's doing it now. Does he know why that guy was doing it, or is he just copying it because that guy's supposedly good? Or does it even matter if he needs to know why? That I think is sometimes interesting, and I guess that expands beyond just like coaching and training, but I'd be curious as to what your thoughts on that are and how you kind of source movements and stuff.
Yeah, I think for me, training has always been like, that's been my like sponge type thing, where it's like I have to absorb everything about it. I have to know the ins and outs and whys. I can't just be, you guys can't just, if you guys are working on something new and you start explaining it to me, I'm going to take what you tell me and I'm going to have to go even further, or I'm going to have a huge list of questions, because I want to know if it's an athlete, a parent, or whoever, if someone has that one question from like the back of the room and I'm not going to be able to give them the answer, like, one, I'm going to take that hard, and I'm also going to take that responsibility as like, I'm the one coaching, I'm the one implementing this training, and I need to be accountable for every part of this, right? So, like when we were using weight releasers, it's like we're using like a very hard super method, and I need to be able to, if something comes up, if something goes awry, I need to at least be able to account for something happened, something went wrong, but at least in the reasoning and why we use this, it's still sound and correct, right? But with that said, I think there's a lot of flavors and fads and stuff that goes on with methods in the strength and conditioning world. Things quickly go in and out of popularity. Like, we'll go back to weight releasers. These things are old. Like, they were used, I want to say like 60s, 70s in the Soviet Union. You know, someone decides to weld some hooks together, and all of a sudden, like, they invented weight releasers, right? Whereas, like, we don't realize there's literally the freaking book is right here on how to use these things, right? And it's basically like, hey, maybe I'm shooting a gun for the first time. Like, I've seen how to use it on TV, but when it's actually time to do it and I, blow myself into the other room because it's a shotgun because I'm not ready for it, I think that's important, right? But also, even with that, I think there's knowing too much as well, right? I had just finished a course up with a bunch of coaches where we were diving into like hard shit, like heavy eccentrics, deep tier, like very top level plyometric type activities, VBT, all that stuff. And in that room, it was a wide range of coaches that, coaching different levels of athletes, and the whys and the whatevers type questions were like, it doesn't matter that much. It's not that important, right? It's like we're peeling away way too many layers on this onion, where it's like, just go use it, just go figure out all the stuff that isn't in the book already, because you're not going to know until you try these things, right? It's that part is huge. So like, learn as much as you can about it, and for God's sakes, go fucking experiment with it already so you know everything about it. And that's the way. Because you'll just get stuck in the classroom and you'll never actually know how something works. You just heard about something and how it works, right? And that's what gets me a little bit of coaches these days, is they don't know when to stop learning about it and just go freaking apply it so they can get the data that they need to make their own decisions about if this is something that works in their gym, ecosystem, population, whatever.
Do you ever run into coaches that apply it too fast and don't learn about it?
Oh, hell
yeah.
Ever
run it? Yeah, because right there's two ends of the spectrum. There's like, dude, just go do it, and then there's what? Why? You saw it? Like, what's going on? So.
Oh yeah, shiny toy, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's when I see the most mistakes pop up, and that's where I see a lot of, I don't know why these injuries are happening. I don't know why all of a sudden this data is tanking, like that stuff where it's like you didn't take the more than 2 days to learn a little bit more about it, or get a sample population to work with it, maybe,
Hell yeah. I have a question kind of related, not fully about training, but more about just work, right? So like, we're learning now, we're younger, and we're learning now, and we're super busy. Like, we're at the gym all friggin' day. Like, how have you been able to find kind of your work-life balance? Like, because there's people like, oh, my 9 to 5, and I need to find my work-life balance. Like, okay, well, like, it'll be 9:30 at night, and some kid's texting me a paragraph, like, I need to do this. I'm like, it's never ending. And like, it's a Sunday, like, you're about to sit down or maybe you already have, but like, sit down and write out all your programs, like, on a Sunday, and you just had a session yesterday on a Saturday. Like, it's kind of never ending, but like, how have you been able to manage that as you're getting, like, the gym is now expanding, you're getting bigger, you're getting more clients? Like, how have you been able to manage that if you feel like you have been,
If at all, right? The funny thing with, I think, this job, profession, career track is like, you see it being done, and then you get into like the real, like, I hate to say it, like, trenches of it, but like, you're in it, you're in the thick of it, and there's just all this stuff that, like, man, no one's going to tell you, no one's going to prepare for you, and there's discipline that needs to be applied in certain places too, right? Where it's like, you got to be good on your boundaries, but you got to be flexible on them a little bit, because at least I am, because I know if I'm too strict on like, hey, it's 9 o'clock, why are you texting me, right? But at the same time, it's like, well, it's 9 o'clock, why am I checking my phone, right? Like, it's like the little compromises, right? So for me, over the years, it's been like a mix of realizing when I'm being like kind of an immature little bitch about something, right? And reminding myself, this is the job I wanted, this is the path I'm taking. Remember, you could just be doing all these other jobs that you know that you don't want to do and you're not set for. And also just taking it kind of one day at a time, right? Like, I'm still learning stuff, 10, 15 years in, where how I would have reacted about something or how I would have handled something 5 years ago would have been drastically different about how I would have done today with it, right? So the being able to set some form of boundaries is important, knowing that there's going to be some flexibility, and reminding that it's like there's grace in people's actions as well, where it's like no one's like purposely meaning to annoy you or like try to like ask you dumb shit at 12 in the morning. It's just like they're impulsive, they're 17, and again, like the world's a big amazing place and they just learned about something and they got to ask you. All right, fine, right? Or like the 3 a.m. DM of like, hey, I really want to train at your place, and you're like, it's 3 a.m. But then again, it's like, why am I even up, right? So like, I could have not opened that. However, so like going further with that, it's like as I've progressed, gotten older, it's like, sure, I've been the guy that takes all Sunday to write all the programs, and I look around and all of a sudden it's 9 p.m. and then it's like, okay, well, I love this, I could do this forever, and then all of a sudden it doesn't feel as great as it used to. So like you start to break it up, or you start to realize that like significant others or family members, friends are starting to like chime in and be like, hey, like we don't see you, what's going on, like that type of stuff. Listening to the outside sources is important in reminding yourself of like what is being reliable to your clients, but also being reliable to yourself is important. And if your workflow and your process isn't good for you, then you're probably not going to be good for people later on. And that's like something like right around the time you guys were training with us is when I started to really pay attention to that, because you go from like, I'm going to run this gym exactly how I think it should be ran. I am an unstoppable force. I am the person everyone can rely on, and I will get the fucking job done. And then all of a sudden, like, it just takes that turn. You're like, ooh, I don't feel so good. I need to make some rules and changes here, right? So it's definitely like a big cup, and when it's finally full, you got to start making some changes. But in talking to other people, other gym owners, nobody's like preemptively prepared for that, right? Like nobody's thinking down the road of like what this is like at scale. And I guess to ram that home a little further, like I have a mentor who had mentioned to me a couple months ago that they were like, okay, great, you can write 60 high-level programs on a Sunday or over the course of 2 days. So what's that look like when it's 80? The simplest question, and I had no answer. I just kind of like stared at them and blinked, and I was like, oh shit, you're right. So like even at this stage, like there's still the planning and preparing for things that haven't even come up yet before, right? So I think it's really like you take a look at how you're working now, you take a look at everything around you, and then you start thinking a little bit of like what are the unforeseen things that can come up that over time can be a huge burden, but on the day-to-day acuteness, it's like it's not that big of a deal. But like it's the middle of February and you're like, this might be more than seasonal depression, right? Like it might not just be my vitamin D. I might just be working like an idiot and being kind of like really hard-headed, foolish about how I'm doing things. And like I said, like that's my number one lately, is always looking at that and always adjusting that.
Yeah. I have one quick question because Troy had mentioned, or no, you had mentioned that 3 a.m. DM, and this is more, I'm asking this on Coach Troy's behalf because he deals with unhinged DMs way more than I do. But so is there a certain point where, all right, you're a coach, you're helping, you're programming, you always want new clients, where somebody reaches out and they want to train, but their reaching out is like sending you essays of like all this information that you didn't ask for, or like all these questions about training and all these self-diagnosed things that they think they need. Like, I think I need to do this. Like we went over it the other day. Troy got one, and it was just, where do you draw the line? I guess this is more personally for you. Where do you draw the line, or what do you have like as red flags where it's, yes, I want to help, but I haven't even spoken to you and you're already as a client basically covering yourself in red paint, being like, I am going to be a problem. I'm going to be a problem. Even if there's some redeemable quality where it's like, yeah, like pretty like has potential, might be okay, but also I'm sending you an essay before we start training, which like I can understand you want to communicate and give all the details that you want before you get started, but at the same time, no, this is not how it's going to work, because then you start rolling through training and then you keep getting essays and paragraphs.
Yep.
And we don't want that, but I guess the question would be more so, how do you, I guess that's an I thing, but how do you kind of restrict that? We had talked about just being really good at setting expectations ahead of time with how communication goes and like what is expected. That's usually a really big one for us. That's bigger in-person training, where it's like expectations of what you can accomplish, what you're in charge of, what you're responsible for, what we're in charge of, what we can help with. But then the unhinged DMs seem to come from online remote people, where it's like you don't have that face to face, so that human connection is like lost, and it's just like
yeah, 100%. I used to get a little hot about stuff like that as well, just because it just seemed like we haven't even got on the phone yet, right? And you're already kind of spilling it out. But these days, I also remind myself, it's like we live in a world where it's like to get a phone call from someone is very like, oh wow, someone called me. That's really something, right?
Not to cut you off,
no,
but like my response to the DMs is, I'll call you. What's your number? Like, I'm not even reading that. Like, I'll just call. Like, I'm not even gonna fucking read that. I'll just call you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So with what you're doing, it's basically like, so I'll tell you what, so I have a mentor, Sarah Menta. She is so good at giving me the blunt type of answers that I give bluntly to other people. She can communicate to me the same way I communicate to my athletes, and I really appreciate that. So when stuff like this comes up, she'll always just be like, all right, well, what are you not doing that's allowing this to happen? And I'm like, oh, fuck me. Like, so with stuff like that, it's like that those things still happen to our gym, but we also have alleyways now where it's like, oh, we have a form you can sign, fill out. There's a website you can go to and just fill out that information. When we usually get like those types of queries, we're like, okay, so in terms of the screening process, this is all good. Like, we'll just contact this person, whatever. And then when we get something like that, it's like, you know, well, sure, we have an Instagram and we do have DMs, and you know, this person's just taking the liberty to just kind of like almost like have the consult and have like an uninterrupted basically soapbox to let you know everything that's going on and what they want and what they hope to get out of training with you. And it's like, okay, great, but you wouldn't say all that if we were on the phone together, right? So like I 100% agree with what Troy does, is be like, yep, I'll call you, right? Whereas in the past, like, I would engage with that, and then it's like, again, with the expectations, like, we're setting up ourselves for maybe the athlete-coach relationship is just going to suck because of that, because of how we started with the athlete before they even walked through the door, where, you know, like Troy said, like, just giving them a call and rebalancing the relationship a little bit can kind of set the tone for, like, now before this athlete even gets through the door, there's recalibration of like, okay, whoa. Like, we're not just walking into some place where it's like, oh, I'll take a number one with medium, large, whatever. Like, there's professionalism and process that's going on right out the gate from them reaching out and contacting me. I think that part it's key. And over time, my God, like I've fucked that up a million times where like that initial conversation set the tone for the next probably short amount of time, you know, maybe only 3 months versus like hopefully this person stays for 16, 18 months, if not forever. That initial conversation I can point to every time and being like, that's why this person was only here for 12 weeks. Because I didn't get a chance to take the reins when I should have. And I was more like reactionary and boo-hooey about how I was contacted about providing a service. So I think it always goes back to that. Just like take the chance to show the professionalism and show what they're getting before they even show up. And all of a sudden like that changes again. It's like they back off a little bit. So that part's huge.
Yeah, and like sometimes it'll be like I'll get them at like 3:30 in the afternoon. Like we're in the middle of a super busy session, and all of a sudden I'm getting these paragraphs like, "How do I do this?" I'm like, I can't answer that right now. Like I don't know what you want from me. Like and I'm just like
yeah.
But I understand, like you said, this is what I signed up for. Like this is part of it. Like this is what I signed up for. So, yeah, it's gonna happen. But also at the same time, like I can't answer. I want to help, but sure, but I can't help you right now. I got some 15-year-old kid who's I'm trying to teach how to squat or RDL. Oh, one of the hardest things to do. How do you teach a youth kid how to do a friggin' RDL?
You're 100%. You're 100% right. You nailed it right there when you said you want to help. So it's our desire and our nature to want to be able to help everyone and be, you know, like I said, we're Johnny on the spot. We want to be able to fix everything immediately and be the guy you can count on. When we realize that we just can't do it all in every moment and every minute of the day, and it just takes like a little bit of like, you know, God forbid it's, you know, we're not going to get to you now, but we're going to get back to you in an hour because there's 30 athletes right now and we're literally on the field and we can't, we don't have a front office, right? Like the two people that run this gym, they're on the field coaching their asses off And when we get you into the system, hey, that's what you're going to experience as well. Us literally coaching our asses off for you. Like, it's an hour, it's 15 minutes, whatever, we'll get back to you. You know, I think speed is king, but at the end of the day, it's also like being available and being able to do it is also important.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
It's really just like managing their patience, not even our own. Honestly, it's like, we'll get back to you, dude.
Really busy, busy. We'll get back to you.
Well,
I like that. Really busy. We'll get back to you.
Yeah, I would honestly say like with thinking out loud, I feel like a chat bot would be huge for you guys on your DMs, where it's just like it makes that fork in the road immediately, right? Where it's like, hey, we're in the gym, we're doing whatever right now, we're gonna get back to you. It's no different than an answering machine, honestly, right? It's an answering machine for your DMs, and if you guys are getting that much volume, then being able to be funneled to the right place is probably going to be huge.
How often do you get people that reach out and they're like, I want like programming, or what's this program, blah, 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 and you send them all the info and they never sign up and just don't answer, and it's like, okay, thanks. Does that happen to you often or no?
No, it's not often, but at the same time, like, we're not the type of gym that we're like getting like 50 leads a month, right?
Right.
So it's like, if we're getting 5 to 6 leads per month, then sure, like the 2 or 3 people that we sign up, like, that's great, that's good conversion, but like that's only good conversion because we're not getting the high volume. So with weightlifting, and I think the gym's reputation, luckily, is the person's already pretty qualified by the time they connect with us. So it's like they feel 80% bought in by the time I even get to the conversation. So I think luckily I haven't had to like really like focus in on like sales and really how to pitch and all that stuff. Just being blunt, being to the process, this is what you're getting with this place, this is what I'm going to give you, has been what gets that going. So less words, maybe like once a month we'll get that one person that's like window shopping, but not really. Yeah.
Fair. What haven't we covered? I feel like we're going to...
I feel like we're gonna have to have Dan back on, because there's literally we could talk for 3
so
hours.
I guess this is one, because we can drive this one home. I don't know if any of the younger guys would ever make it this far in a podcast, but if any other coaches are listening after you talk about like gym and coaching and stuff, I don't know. But we can cut it up, because you talked about it, the importance of long-term athlete development and how important that is from a programming standpoint, but also how to manage it, because what we found, we started having youth classes, like getting younger kids, just teaching them the fundamentals, like middle school. It's completely different. It's a completely different thing than it is like when you're training older high school into college level athletes to actually go off and like do something. It's almost like the problem you're trying to solve is, how do I make this kind of boring thing of just lifting weights fun, entertaining, engaging for an hour long, so these 12-year-old kids actually get something out of it and keep coming back. Usually by the time they become freshmen, they're really engaged and are really bought in, but that 6th, 7th, 8th grade, like they don't quite see it, they don't quite understand, because obviously hindsight is 20. You can see it looking back. If only this kid started here, if only I started doing this at this stage in my life, it'd make all the difference. But it's so hard to get that through to a kid. Like, if you train really hard for the next 8 years, you're going to be incredible. You're going to be so good. If you just train really hard consistently for like the next 8 years, I know you don't think you're very good right now, you will be incredible. At what? At anything you want, but absolutely incredible. And trying to, being that I'm 28 years old, trying to get that message without seeming like an absolute lunatic to younger kids. Just like, dude, you could do it. And it's just kind of turning it more into like a game and fun. But I guess it's more just keeping that funnel open to get kids doing it. But I was curious as to what your experience has been with that and what things you've done to get I guess you started out that way. I don't know. I didn't have a concise question. I ramble on and then like speak off of my ramblings. I don't know.
Yeah, you're okay. So I would say the ultimate separator, which is hard, is when you are coaching a certain age group, closer you are to that age group, the easier it is. Right? So like when I was 24 and 25 and I'm, thrown into the fire of working with 13, 14-year-olds. At that time, it was easier to relate with those kids then than it is now at 38 years old, right? So it's basically like what we were saying earlier about buy-in. It's like also not being like an authoritative figure. Like you're kind of like, like you're like Big Brother Troy, right? It seems more like that than Coach Troy. That part is huge. Now, we can't be 25 forever, so whatever. But also still being like relatable, still being kind of fun, and showing the process as an enjoyable thing, not a chore, and not this like labor for the love of the game type whatever that they can't get their freaking heads around. That it's really focusing on the other stuff, like, these kids can get strong super fast. We know what can happen in 4 weeks, right? We know if some of these kids are participating. I used to love, like, the AAU basketball type kid, where it was like, we don't have the measurements at the moment, but they know for a fact that they went from just touching the bottom of the net to halfway up the net, right? That's shit they can see within a month, and they're like, the only thing that changes, I started training, right? That stuff starts to come in, and that part's fun. Joking around, messing around with you guys, that part's fun too. Right? Like knowing when to have fun and knowing when to hammer down, right? And also really just getting into the process and the ecosystem of the gym is huge too, right? Like realizing that it's not this place that is the same as a football locker room. It's not the same as a AAU basketball court. The fact that it's different is the important part. That's what I've learned. So the fact that you guys are different as coaches, and you guys aren't teachers, parents, or sport coaches, and the fact that the gym is not the same as the locker room or the sport field is also important. And it's like church and state are separated at all times, but they help each other. I think once the kids start to realize that, and it only takes a couple weeks, that is the thing that keeps them there forever.
Great answer to a very vague, unclear question.
I love it. I think that was a great, over an hour of talking coaching and everything, and we'll transition now, unless Otto
to the
has
fun.
More.
Just
into some
some
Q&As, just into some other like Q&A stuff. But what has been your favorite coaching moment and or like experience? Like I know you just had Sarah went to Worlds. Like I don't know if like that's awesome. I don't know if that's your favorite or whatever, but like you've done some pretty fucking cool shit and seen some cool shit as a coach. So just curious as to like what your favorite has been, if you can even pick one.
Oh God, I would say. I mean, I'll be kind of vague about it, but I want to say like the first time that you sit at the first time you go to someone's signing, or the first time you're seeing a kid sign a Division I letter, you cannot replace that feeling. And no different than the first time someone on this team has made like a national medal or a national podium, you can't replace that feeling. So the firsts are always the big ones, and like those ones you always like kind of fall back on. It's like I fucking hate saying this, but like as success goes on, you're still happy and you're proud, but it's like it can be kind of like you're expecting it too much. That's all. So like the firsts are always the big ones for me. Always.
Good. Fight to the death of these armies. Okay, who wins? Okay, 3 armies, fight to the death of them. Pol Pot, Stalin, Mussolini, the fight to the death of those 3 regimes. They are all to fight each other. Who do you think would win? I think I'm going to take...
Where did this question come from? Did someone... There's way too much nuance to this question to answer it in a one-liner. Where did that question come from? That is crazy.
Is it one gorilla or just 100 Troys? Which one is it, right? Like...
Pol Pot, Stalin, Mussolini, of those 3 armies... Who do we think is taken down? They all go face each other, right? Say, maybe Stalin's the 1 seed, he gets a bye, and, Pol Pot and Mussolini have to fight each other in the playing game.
That's awesome. Yeah, Stalin's getting the 1 seed. He's going to definitely sit. He's going to sit and wait. And, yeah, I'm going to say Stalin takes it with having to go with Pol Pot in the championship round.
In the championship round. That's a great answer.
At the end of the day, you can't. The numbers matter. Yeah.
This is a question. Did you ask this question to short circuit me because it worked?
Why?
Are they the same size? Or are we just? What kind of question is it? Just the 3 guys, or
no, it's their army,
their entire military
armies.
might? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not going to answer that question.
Their entire military.
Viewers, submit your answer to that question to Coach Troy. I also recommend that you look up each of those 3 armies and provide evidence as to why and who you think would win. Please DM Troy a paragraph as to why you think one of those people would win and cite your source. And thank you for that. Yeah, we can have some participation with that question, actually. Send him a paragraph.
If this question doesn't end up in the top of my Google search when I go search later, I'm going to be so pissed.
Yeah.
Whoever sends the best explanation, you'll get a free protein bar. Whoever sends the best reason as to who would win. So people ask, Dan, what happens is people ask me on my Instagram, like when I put up polls, like questions, like people ask me crazy questions. That's one of them. Another one.
That was a DM question?
Well, kind of. This one is a DM question. Will smoking crack increase my bench press? And I think the answer to that would be yes. I would think so. I don't know exactly, but you know, if you want to explore that route, listen.
Yeah, there's just some things we don't have to use the scientific method on, right? Like we can just assume that while we're really doing this. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a heavy CNS stimulant will do the job. Like, yeah, man, like just go on YouTube, watch Cops. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
acutely, maybe. Long term, it might not be. You know that. Yeah. I would have to say on the Gud Performance Podcast, I think we have to advise against that, despite potential acute benefits in, you know, say a bench press from smoking crack. We'd have to advise against that as one, a lifestyle choice, and two, a strategy for increasing your bench press. Yeah. But it might work.
Like it could be good, but probably long term really bad.
Just at the same time. Yeah,
dude,
just have more caffeine.
This is that same conversation of like the people who are like, I can't bench 315. I should like hop on Trent. It's like, bitch, you don't know what you're talking about. You need to just train for like 5 years. Right?
You know, I think Dane just made a video about that, and I thought it was hilarious. He's like, you're on Trent, and we have high school kids stronger than you, and he like pulled up the study and it was like majority of people on Trent like can't even bench 315. It's like,
that's a crazy stat.
It's like, what the fuck are you taking Trent for? Like 2 bench 315? Like what the hell? Like we have high schoolers benching that.
Yeah, we live in a world of shortcuts, man. You know, that's all I can say. So
you've changed gym locations multiple times. What has been the most annoying part of that, and what has been like the most fun part of that, I guess, too?
The most annoying part about changing gyms or changing locations is doing it, for sure.
Like actively moving everything is just a bitch.
Yeah, I think as you move along in your career, it's like moving out of a house or an apartment. You don't realize how much like crap you accumulate. And you're like, okay, well, this stuff's coming, this stuff's not. And also, I feel like you guys definitely experience this. It's like, there's like the right place, and then there's like the place that you're actually going to like go into, and it ends up being the right place, right? Where it's like you have your wish list, you have your wants, you have your whatever, and with the way things are, it's just like you can't hit all the marks. And then you actually find the place that you move into, and you're like, yeah, this is the one. This is what we were looking for. I just didn't realize it, you know? It's so hard unless like you're going to build it yourself, you know? I would say that. So it's like you got your wish list, you got your wants, and then you move into the place that you actually end up moving into, and it hits all those marks anyways. So it just seems like a compromise when it's really not, you know? That's always been the thing for me. Yeah. That it's like, yeah, it's perfect, fine, whatever. Let's operate.
It'll do.
Yeah, let's operate. Let's open tomorrow. Yeah. Fuck. Moving stuff.
Yeah, moving shit. And then last one I got, what is next for Dojo Dan and the dojo? Where do you see, you know, the dojo going? Where do you want it to go? And what's next? You know, it's what's your plans? What's your vision?
The plan and the vision is definitely to have a bigger reach. You know, kind of like we're doing now this year. I've kind of told myself that I need to start opening up, talking to more people, start sharing what I know, realizing people value what I actually have to say. Me being kind of like, I don't know, like ignorant to that, or just maybe more humble than I should be about it. So getting out and networking, getting out and talking more, and having a little bit more of like a bigger reach on weightlifting and trying to grow the team on a remote level. I think weightlifting is fine in the area. It's growing, but in terms of like where I want to be with very high performance athletics in the sport, there has to be a reach for that to actually get to where it needs to, versus just homegrown developing athletes the way we would in football and things like that. So that's been definitely the goal.
Anything? Those are my Q&As right there.
Yeah, I had a few questions that I guess we could just bang out now. They're not as fun, lighthearted, but I guess these are kind of important ones that I meant to ask at the beginning and just completely didn't. But I feel like they're kind of valuable to have from you, or we could have you back on. How do you keep evolving without losing the core of what you do? Basically, how do you keep growing as a coach without losing like what basically got you started and made you great, right? Because from a point, right, when Troy and I started, it's just screaming rah, rah, rah. So, and I think this actually this hasn't happened to us yet, but I've heard other stories of coaches that will eventually get so tied up in, like you said, in the classroom with application that they basically lose the intensity that made them like it, which I think you did a really good job with staying calm. But how do you just evolve? I guess I'll just stop. I keep answering my own question with my own perspective and then letting you talk. So I'm just going to ask the question. How do you keep evolving without losing the core of what you do as a coach?
Yeah, I think replacing, I want to say like wasted energy, but replacing energy with refinement has been huge. You can ask any of the kids that I trained early on, you could ask a James Harris, you can ask a Dandini, that I would just, instead of having more process and refinement, I would just go at them like a bull and just get what I need, right? And I think every coach can start off that way. So like as I've gone, I've lowered my intensity to be able to coach all day and all week and not be fried at 8 o'clock at the end of a Monday, right? And then also, I guess, I hate the fucking adage, but like working smarter, not harder, and then giving yourself the space and time to do both. Coach hard as you want and learn as much as you want at the same time. As long as those vehicles are adjacent, we're fine. But I guess business too. So like if those three things are riding level, then we're good and we're harmonious. If one of those things are taking too much precedence, then I think that's when it gets weird and you could fall off a little bit. So it's always just keeping everything together at all times and not letting one of those buckets overflow.
Yeah. What's the biggest change, or how has your coaching philosophy changed in the past 5 years, like in conjunction with the shift of the athletes like we talked about, from like us to more weightlifters to strengthening and conditioning to weightlifting? How has, if it's changed at all, your overarching philosophy with coaching changed?
My thing has been really going back to like, I suppose, what are my core beliefs in terms of training has always brought me back to center and brought me back to like, I'm doing my best. I can point to my best programming, coaching, and anything else when I go back to, I think, what I purely believe in. And when I stay basic, everything goes the way it needs to. When I get too sexy about it, like an Otto or a Troy walks in and I think I have to go harder than I need to, or I have to go more advanced than I have to, then that can be tough. And then as I transition into more weightlifting coaching, same thing. If I try to be too much of a weightlifting coach, I'm not that good of a weightlifting coach when that happens. If I keep my strength and conditioning roots, I out-program and I out-coach probably 90% of everyone honestly in the country. Like keeping that mindset as what has made success and a lot of early success for athletes too. So I think, I guess just not being too specific and not being too short-sighted of things has kept it going and kept it going well.
And then my final question, what keeps you going and where do you find and draw inspiration from now?
I would 100% say the thing that keeps me going is knowing that everyone in our facility has goals and they have big goals, and I adopt those goals as my own. Also, there's also those moments where it's like that one new person or that one athlete walks in and it really, even when you think you're not kind of like losing the fire a little bit, like someone will walk in and immediately just like, they'll light it underneath you for you just by the newness of it, or the how someone showed up to you with this goal because they trust you with this goal. That gets me going, honestly. It's like the fact that someone trusted me with this to do whatever that goal is and that we're going to get this done is what gets me out of bed in the morning, honestly. And it's probably the last thing I'm thinking about before I go to bed too. It's not shit about me, it's shit about them, always,
Yeah. Well, that's all for questions. And where can people follow you and follow along on the dojo and plug all your socials for everybody that might be listening?
All the socials. Yeah, you can find us at dojowl.com, and our Instagram is dojo_WL, and that's the socials.
Awesome.
That's it.
So Dan, we appreciate you. Systems, feel, mindset, coaching. You're a mentor to us, and you you kind of set the standard for us as coaches before we even knew we needed a standard. So we appreciate you for that, and we really are grateful for having you on here. If anybody listening needs any type of programming for weightlifting, or you just want to work with Dan after listening to this, reach out. We can't co-sign him enough. Highly recommend. He was great, very transformative coach for both Troy and I, and very helpful for us. So thanks, Dan.
Yeah,
That's
thank you guys.
an
Thank
hour,
you.
almost 90 minutes of fury right there.
Yeah,